They say if you get lost in this forest, you'll eventually find a version of yourself. Don't follow it. Welcome to the Wilderness Protocol. There are protocols for disorientation. A compass, a map, the position of the sun. We are taught to trust these tools to find our way when we are lost. But there is no protocol for the moment when you are no longer sure of who or what you are looking for. There is no map for the wilderness inside yourself. My name is Thomas. I'm a biologist. I deal in genetics in the unique, unrepeatable code that makes each living thing itself. I believed in the sanctity of the individual. I believed that my consciousness myself was a singular contained event. Then I got lost in the Aokigahara forest. And the forest taught me that a copy is not a tribute. It is a replacement. And that the most dangerous thing you can find in the woods is yourself. They call it the Sea of Trees. Aokigahara, a forest at the base of Mount Fuji in Japan, famous for two things: the haunting beauty of its twisted, moss-covered trees, and the number of people who walk into it and never walk out. The official narrative, the one you read in the guidebooks, is one of tragedy and sorrow. But the locals, the ones whose families have lived in the shadow of that forest for centuries, they have a different story. They have a protocol. It's a simple warning passed down in whispers. If you get lost in Aokigahara, you will eventually find a version of yourself. Don't follow it. I, of course, dismissed this as folklore. Superstitious nonsense meant to scare tourists. I was there for a scientific reason. I was part of a small international team studying the unique bryophyte ecosystems, the incredible diversity of mosses and lichens that carpeted the forest floor. I was a man of science, of observable facts and replicable data. My partner was a botanist named Kenji. He was a local, a man whose quiet reverence for the forest was palpable. He moved through the dense, tangled woods with the grace that I, with my clumsy hiking boots and high-tech gear, could never match. It was Kenji who first told me the story, the protocol. We were a few days into our research, deep in a section of the forest far from any marked trail. We were setting up sample grids. Be careful not to wander too far, Thomas-san, he said, his voice soft. It is very easy to lose your way here. The volcanic rock plays tricks on compasses. And the trees, they look the same in every direction. Don't worry, Kenji, I'd laughed. I have a GPS. I think 21st century technology can handle a few tricky trees. He didn't laugh back. He just looked at me with his dark, serious eyes. The technology is not the problem, he said. The problem is what you find when you are truly lost. The old people say the forest, it pities the lonely. It sees a soul that is lost and wandering, and it tries to offer them a guide, a companion, a familiar face. A version of yourself? I asked, remembering the folklore. He nodded gravely. A reflection. An echo. It will look like you. It will sound like you. It will know the path. But it is a lure. It is a shepherd that leads the lost sheep not back to the fold, but deeper into the woods, to a quiet, still place where they can be together. Forever. The rule is simple. If you see it, you turn and walk in the opposite direction. You do not speak to it. You do not call out to it. And you must not, under any circumstances, follow it. I appreciated the story for its cultural richness, but I filed it away under interesting local myths. I had my GPS. I was not going to get lost. The first week of our research was incredible. The forest was like another world. The ground was a soft, uneven carpet of moss, swallowing all sound. The trees were twisted and gnarled, their roots snaking over the volcanic rock like the arthritic fingers of the earth. It was a place of profound, almost sacred silence. The day it happened was the 8th day of our expedition. Kenji had to return to the university in Tokyo for a day to deliver some samples. I was to continue the survey work alone. He was hesitant to leave me. The forest is not the same when you are alone, he'd said, his brow furrowed with worry. I'll be fine, I'd assured him. I'll stick to the grid we laid out. I won't go far. He left at dawn. I spent the morning working, collecting samples, feeling a sense of deep, peaceful solitude. It was in the early afternoon that I decided to push a little further to survey a small, promising-looking valley that was just outside our designated grid. It would only take an hour, I told myself. A small scientific detour. It was my first mistake. The valley was deeper and more tangled than I had anticipated. The trees grew so close together that the sky was just a memory. The ground was a confusing labyrinth of moss-covered lava rocks. I was so focused on the fascinating lichens I was finding that I didn't pay enough attention to my path. When I finally finished and turned to head back to camp, I realized I was disoriented. Every direction looked the same. The same gnarled trees, the same carpet of moss, the same oppressive green twilight. No problem, I muttered to myself, pulling out my handheld GPS. I powered it on. The screen flickered to life. And then it displayed a message I had never seen before. Satellite signal not found. I stared at it. That was impossible. This was a top-of-the-line device capable of connecting to multiple satellite networks. I had never lost a signal, not even in the deepest canyons of the American Southwest. I rebooted it. The same message appeared. I tried my backup, a smaller, simpler model. The same result. A cold knot of fear began to form in my stomach. I pulled out my traditional compass. I placed it on a flat rock. The needle spun lazily, then spun again, refusing to settle. The volcanic rock. Kenji had warned me. It was playing tricks on the magnet. I was, for the first time in my professional life, truly, utterly lost. Panic is a corrosive acid. Eats away at logic, at reason. I fought it down. I was a biologist, a man trained to observe and think. I knew the protocol for being lost. Stay put. Conserve energy. Make yourself visible. I stayed where I was for an hour. I called out, my voice sounding small and pathetic against the immense silence of the forest. No answer. The sun was getting lower. The green twilight was deepening into a murky gloom. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was predatory. I had to move. I had to try to find my way back. I chose a direction that felt right, and I started to walk, marking my path by breaking small branches on the trees I passed, a clumsy, modern-day Theseus in a green labyrinth. I walked for what felt like hours. The forest became a repetitive, hypnotic loop of the same trees, the same rocks, the same moss. My hope began to curdle into a quiet, creeping despair. And then I saw him. Through a gap in the trees about 50 yards ahead of me, a man was walking. His back was to me. He was walking in the same direction I was slowly, deliberately. He was wearing the same gear as me. A dark green waterproof jacket, tan hiking pants, and a familiar-looking gray backpack. My backpack. Relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy washed over me. It was another hiker. Maybe another researcher. He was here. I wasn't alone. Hey! I shouted, my voice cracking with relief. Hey, wait up! The figure didn't stop. He didn't turn. He just kept walking, his pace unchanging, and disappeared behind a thick grove of twisted cypress trees. I ran after him, crashing through the undergrowth, shouting, Hey! Please! I'm lost. Can you help me? I burst through the grove of trees and into a small, unnaturally clear, circular meadow. The figure was standing in the center, his back still to me. Thank God, I panted, leaning on my knees to catch my breath. I thought I was going to have to spend the night out here. I'm completely turned around. The figure remained still, silent. My name's Thomas, I said, walking closer. My GPS is out. My compass is useless. Do you have a map? He didn't move. A new cold unease began to creep back in, pushing aside my relief. There was something wrong with his posture. He was standing too still, too rigid. Like a mannequin. Hello, I said, stopping about 20 feet away. Are you okay? And then very, very slowly he began to turn around. The man who faced me was me. It was not someone who looked like me. It was me. My face. My worried frown. The small pale scar just above my left eyebrow from a childhood cycling accident. The same 3-day stubble on my cheeks. He was wearing my jacket, my pants, my boots. He was a perfect, living, breathing mirror image. I stared, my mind utterly unable to process what my eyes were seeing. This was impossible. A delusion. A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. But he was so real. I could see the faint, rhythmic pulse of a vein in his neck. I could see his chest rise and fall with a slow, steady breath. He looked at me, and his expression was one of profound, heartbreaking pity. Then he spoke, and the voice that came out was my own, but it was not my own. It was a perfect recording of my voice, but flat, devoid of all emotion, like a text-to-speech program reading my soul. "You are lost," he said, my lips barely moving. "You took the crooked path. I am the straight path. I can lead you home." I couldn't speak. My throat was a knot of pure terror. Kenji's warning, the folklore I had dismissed so easily, came screaming back into my mind. If you get lost, you will find a version of yourself. Don't follow it. This was it. The lure. The shepherd. The forest pity made manifest. What are you?" I finally managed to stammer. "I am the way back," the copy of me said, its voice calm and reasonable. "I am the part of you that was not lost. I know the trail. The sun is setting. The forest is not safe in the dark. You should follow me." He raised his hand and beckoned, a simple, gentle gesture of invitation. Every instinct for survival, every rational thought was screaming at me to do what Kenji had said, to turn and walk in the opposite direction, to not engage. But I was lost. I was terrified. And he was offering me an answer. He was offering me a way home. The pull of that promise, the temptation to believe in this impossible guide, was overwhelming. And he looked so sad, so sympathetic. He looked at me with my own eyes, and they were full of a pity that was almost unbearable. I took a single, hesitant step towards him. It was my second and most critical mistake. The moment I moved towards him, the pity in his eyes vanished. It was replaced by something else. A flicker of triumph. A cold, predatory, and utterly alien intelligence. The mask had slipped. And the smile that spread across his face, my face, was not my smile. It was a fraction too wide, a degree too sharp. It was the smile of a trap that has just been sprung. The smile on my own face was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. It broke the spell of my confusion, replacing it with the jolt of pure, chemical adrenaline. I had acknowledged it. I had moved towards it. I had failed the first unspoken test. I turned and ran. I didn't choose a direction. I just ran away from that clearing, away from that impossible smiling replica of myself. I crashed through the dense, tangled undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, thorns tearing at my clothes. I could hear it behind me. It wasn't running. It was just following. There were no heavy footsteps, no ragged breathing. Just a calm, steady, and unervingly close presence. A soft, relentless patting on the mossy ground. I risked a glance over my shoulder. It was keeping pace with me effortlessly, gliding through the forest with the same grace Kenji possessed. It wasn't pushing itself. It was just staying with me, its smiling face a pale, ghostly mask in the deepening gloom. It was hurting me. The forest itself seemed to be conspiring with it. The ground became a treacherous mess of gnarled roots and hidden holes. The air grew thick and heavy. The silence was absolute, save for the sound of my own frantic, panicked breathing and the soft, steady pursuit behind me. I ran until my lungs felt like they were on fire, until my legs were numb and clumsy. I finally burst through a thicket of cypress trees and stumbled into another clearing. And I stopped dead. My doppelganger, the copy, was standing in the middle of this new clearing, waiting for me. It was impossible. I had been running away from it. There was no way it could have gotten ahead of me. It was still smiling, that same awful, knowing smile. "The crooked path only leads to more crooked paths, Thomas," it said in my own flat, emotionless voice. "You are making this difficult for yourself. Let me guide you." It pointed to a path leading out of the clearing to my left. It was a clear, well-defined path, the ground beaten down and easy to walk on. It looked safe, inviting. "This is the way," it said. My own path, the one I had just come from, was a tangled, chaotic mess. I looked from the clear path to the tangled one, and I remembered Kenji's words. I am the straight path. But Kenji had also said, don't follow it. This was another test. The forest was presenting me with a choice. Logic, ease, safety or instinct, difficulty, and the unknown. No, I gasped, backing away. I turned my back on the clear, inviting path and plunged back into the tangled, difficult woods, choosing the path of most resistance. The thing's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. The voice in my head, for I now realized it was communicating directly with my mind, was tinged with something new. Annoyance. A foolish choice. You are only delaying the inevitable. The chase resumed. But this time it was different. The forest became an active participant in the hunt. Illusions flickered at the edge of my vision. I would see a glimpse of my base camp through the trees, only for it to dissolve into mist as I got closer. I would hear Kenji's voice calling my name, a sound that would lead me into a dense, thorny bog. The forest was reading my mind, my hopes, my memories, and using them to create false beacons to lead me astray. And my guide, my smiling, relentless twin, was always there, sometimes behind me, sometimes waiting for me in a clearing, always patiently offering me the easy way out. With every false hope, with every dead end, my despair grew. The sun was gone, and a deep, moonless dark fell upon the forest. I was exhausted, scratched, and bleeding. My water was running low. I was losing. I finally collapsed at the base of a massive, ancient tree, its roots like the gnarled knuckles of a giant hand. I couldn't run anymore. I was done. I curled into a ball, my head in my hands, and waited for it to find me. A few minutes later it arrived. It stood over me, a tall, silent silhouette against the faint starlight that filtered through the canopy. It is time to stop fighting, the voice said in my mind. It was no longer a mimic of my own voice. It was something else. Older. Deeper. A voice of calm, absolute authority. A voice that sounded like the forest itself. You are tired. You are lonely. You are lost. Let us give you peace. Let us give you company. I looked up. The figure was crouching over me. Its face was no longer my face. The illusion was gone. The face was a smooth, pale, featureless mask like unworked clay. But as I watched, it began to change. It shifted, the features melting and reforming. It became Kenji's face, his eyes full of a serene wisdom. Then it became my father's face, his expression one of gentle disappointment. And then it became her face. Sarah, my ex-wife. The one whose departure had sent me seeking the quiet in the first place. Her face was the one it settled on. She looked at me, her eyes full of the love I had lost. It's all right, Tom, she whispered, her voice a perfect, heartbreaking echo. You don't have to be alone anymore. Come with me. We can be together here. It's so quiet. So peaceful. It was the ultimate temptation. A perfect, cruel, and irresistible lure. It was offering me the one thing in the universe I wanted. Tears streamed down my face. I reached out a trembling hand to touch her cheek. And as my fingers were about to make contact, a new thought, a different protocol, cut through my grief-stricken haze. It was something my biologist self had learned long ago. The principle of mimicry in nature. A mimic, like the viceroy butterfly copying the monarch, survives by being a perfect, convincing copy. But there is always a flaw. A tell. A small, almost unnoticeable imperfection that distinguishes the copy from the original. I looked at Sarah's face. It was perfect. Her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. It was all perfect. Too perfect. I focused on her left eye, and I saw it. In her real eye, there had been a tiny fleck of gold in the green iris. A unique, beautiful flaw that I had loved. This eye, the eye of the mimic, was a perfect uniform green. There was no flaw. There was no fleck of gold. The illusion shattered. You're not her, I whispered, my voice raw. The face of my ex-wife contorted, not in anger, but in a look of profound, almost scientific curiosity. The voice in my mind was no longer her voice. It was the ancient, deep voice of the forest. Interesting. You have identified the flaw. The error in the replication. This has not happened before. Your observational skills are notable. I scrambled back, away from it. The creature stood up, its form shifting again, losing the features of Sarah, becoming once more that tall, featureless, clay-like figure. You are different from the others, the voice continued, its tone now purely analytical. The others, they are simple. They are lost. They seek a familiar guide, and they follow. Their desire for comfort is stronger than their sense of self. They are easy to replicate. Easy to comfort. Comfort. I spat. You mean consume. Is there a difference? The voice asked, a genuine philosophical question. We offer an end to their loneliness. We give them a perfect, unchanging companion themselves. They walk together forever in a quiet place. Is that not a kindness? A form of peace? The sheer, alien nature of its morality was more terrifying than any monster. It was not evil. It was just a different kind of life, with a different definition of existence. But you, the voice said, its focus returning to me. You are not just lost in the woods. You are lost in your own thoughts. You look for the flaws. You see the patterns. You resist the easy path. You do not want a guide. You want to understand the map. It tilted its featureless head. This makes you difficult. It makes you a poor replica. But it makes you a fascinating original. The protocol for a simple lure is insufficient here. A new protocol is required. It raised its hand. And this time it was not beckoning. The fingers elongated, sharpened, becoming like the gnarled roots of an ancient tree. We cannot copy you, Thomas Vance, the voice in my head said, its tone now holding a chilling, new note of discovery and hunger. So we will simply have to deconstruct you. We will take you apart piece by piece until we understand how you work. And then we will build a better version. The creature's intent was no longer to lure me. It was to dissect me. The game had changed from a psychological chase to a physical existential threat. It lunged. I didn't think. I just moved. I rolled sideways, scrambling behind the massive trunk of the ancient tree I had collapsed against. The root-like fingers of the mimic slammed into the space where I had been, gouging deep furrows in the mossy earth. I was a biologist. My strength was not in fighting but in understanding systems. And this creature, this forest, was a system with rules. Kenji had told me the first rule. Don't follow the copy. But what if that rule was a two-way street? I fumbled in my pack and pulled out the small signal mirror from my emergency kit. It was a desperate, insane idea, born from the creature's own words, reflection, copy. The mimic was circling the tree, its movement silent and fluid. I took a deep breath, held the small mirror up, and stepped out from behind the trunk. I held the mirror up to its face. The effect was instantaneous and bizarre. The creature stopped. It tilted its smooth, featureless head and stared at its own reflection in the small, polished surface. For the first time, it was confronted with a copy that it had not created. A perfect, instantaneous, and flawed reflection of its own formless self. A sound came from it, not a voice in my head, but a real physical sound. A low, confused, guttural groan. The smooth surface of its face began to ripple, to distort, as if the clay was trying and failing to sculpt itself into the shape it was seeing. What is this? The voice in my head stammered, full of a confusion that mirrored my own from when I had first seen it. It is me? But it is small. Contained. Flawed. It was trying to reconcile its own formless, perfect nature with the finite, flawed image in the mirror. It was caught in a logical feedback loop. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. While it was distracted by its own impossible reflection, I turned and ran, this time with a purpose. I ran back the way I had come, back towards the memory of the paths I had marked, back towards the world of predictable, flawed reality. I ran for my life. The forest was still a confusing labyrinth, but the active, malevolent illusions had stopped. The creature, the mind of the forest, was preoccupied. It was locked in a staring contest with itself. I don't know how long I ran. I just know that I eventually stumbled upon one of my own markers, a small, broken branch, and then another. I was on the right path. I finally emerged from the tree line at dawn, stumbling into the parking lot where Kenji had dropped me off what felt like a lifetime ago. I was scratched, bruised, and dehydrated. But I was alone. And I was whole. The debriefing with Kenji was a strange affair. I tried to explain what had happened. The GPS failure, the copy of myself, the smile, the chase, the final confrontation. He listened patiently, his face a mask of solemn understanding. When I finished, he just nodded slowly. You have seen the kagemusha, he said, using the Japanese word for a political decoy or body double. The shadow warrior. That is what the old stories call it. But what is it, Kenji? I pleaded. He sighed. We do not know. Some say it is a spirit, a kodama, that protects the forest by leading intruders astray. Others say it is the forest itself, a consciousness that creates what it needs. My grandfather believed it was a flaw in the world. A place where reality is thin and the potential for what a person could be, their other paths, can sometimes bleed through and take physical form. A living, breathing what-if. And the rule? I asked. Why can't you follow it? Because, Kenji said, his eyes full of an old sadness, the copy, the kagemusha, is a perfect version. It is you without your fear, without your doubt, without your sorrow. It is the you that never got lost. It knows the way home. But if you follow it, if you let it guide you, you are admitting that it is better, more capable than you are. You are ceding your own right to exist. You are agreeing to be replaced. You follow it back to the trail, and when you get there, you are the one who fades away. And it is the one that walks out of the woods wearing your life. A cold so profound it had nothing to do with temperature washed over me. I had come so close. I had taken that first step. I had almost agreed to my own erasure. I am back in my lab now. I am surrounded by the comforting, absolute truths of genetics and data. But I am changed. I look at a DNA sequence, that unique code of an individual, and I wonder, how many other paths did that code have? What other versions of that creature could have existed? I no longer see the world as a collection of singular, unique beings. I see it as a forest of possibilities, a sea of potential echoes. And sometimes on quiet nights when I am working late and I catch my reflection in the dark glass of a computer monitor, I see it for a split second. Myself. But smiling. A smile that is a fraction too wide, a degree too sharp. A reflection of the man I could have been, the one who never got lost. A reminder of the rule. The most dangerous thing in the world is not the monster that hides in the woods. It's the one that wears your face, knows your name, and promises you an easier way home. Don't follow it. Thank you for listening to this testimony from the Wilderness Protocol. The self is a fragile construct. In the deep, quiet places, you may be forced to confront it. The protocol is simple. Always trust the flawed, uncertain, and fearful original. Always trust the version of you that gets lost. It's the only one that's real. If this report has provided a valuable warning, please consider liking this video and subscribing for further psychological and existential field reports. The most important boundaries are the ones we draw around ourselves.